is do some really very quick overviews of some services, both within the Division of Academic Affairs and the Division of Student Affairs. And these are not going to be completely comprehensive. So it's a very quick overview. But then what we'd like to do is get into almost case studies and get some feedback from you, make it a little bit interactive. John has pulled some information from some areas and some individual situations that he's worked with. I've pulled some from some areas that I've worked at, but we decided that it was best to illustrate some of the issues our students are facing by actually showing you some of the issues our students are facing. And so I'm going to go through a few quick things with academic affairs in terms of the support services, and then I'm going to turn it over to John. He's going to do some quick things, and then we'll try to get through as many of the student scenarios as we can. And of course, as is probably not surprising to you, we have de-identified all of the student situations so that hopefully none of these students are identifiable to you. But Diane, if I could share the screen quickly. Okay, let's see. Can everyone see that? Okay, good. I've got some people nodding their head yes. So just as I said, quick introduction, we'll do a couple of things so that you can see what some of the services are. I'm going to focus a little bit mostly on FY21 because there have been a ton of things that are brand new with FY21. Some of that due to my position starting on July 1st, some of that due to some planning that Andave has done in the Division of Student Affairs, and some of that just due to some of the circumstances with COVID. So want to talk to you about some of the FY21 initiatives. Most of you know, many of you know that we are doing some pretty intensive student success planning. And I would say we have not perhaps done this comprehensively at the university up until this point. It really is a springboard. The planning for the academic affairs retreat that's happening the end of this month is a springboard for some full campus-wide planning. We're doing some planning, and Diane has been involved in some of these preliminary conversations at the department, college, and university level. We've had some conversations with some chairs within the College of Arts and Sciences and other colleges so far to talk to them about what are the individual and unique student success issues that they're facing within their departments. As we've been talking, we think the planning needs to start really at the granular level. We are very lucky to have received $1.9 million in GEAR grant. That's the Governor's Educational Excellence something, I can't remember what R stands for, but it's CARES Act money that we are able to serve some of the needs of our students who are first generation, low income, or from underrepresented populations. The bulk of this money has been dedicated to purchasing loaner laptops for students who meet one of those categories and have needed them. We've given around, about 350, 400 loaner laptops and still have plenty more to give through September of 2021. We've started through the planning to identify what we started calling them milestones, but maybe they are less milestones, but indicators of student success that go beyond the retention and graduation rates. Retention and graduation rates are outcomes. They're basically the bottom line thing that we need to look at, but they're not the only thing. And our students and our faculty and our staff are telling us that there are many other things that we need to look at in terms of indicators of student success. As I've been doing some of this planning, I'm working very closely with Dr. Johanna Cuenca-Carlino, who many of you who are in the College of Education know very well. She has been doing for about a year and a half now a lot of faculty success initiatives, but she and I firmly believe that you can't talk about student success without talking about faculty success, and vice versa, that the conversations can and should be intertwined. A lot of partnerships with student affairs. We dedicated $50,000. Actually, there's an article that just came out today, dedicated $50,000 of the grant, the GEAR money, to the Multicultural Center to do construction and outfitting of I keep calling it the podcasting room. It's more than the podcasting room. John's going to correct me.
No, at this point, multimedia, podcasting works.
Yep. And then we have been working with Dr. Scott Jordan in the Department of Psychology on a 5-part series of virtual panels called ReggieCon. So any of you who are comic book aficionados, our next one is coming up on next Thursday night. Looking at the world of Wakanda in honor of Black History Month, we'll have one for the next few months, and we had 2 in the fall. Those are recorded on the ReggieCon website. We're pretty excited about these. Some other things within the Division of Academic Affairs that we did at the beginning of the academic year, some of this in response to COVID, some of this with some of the needs our students were telling us. We did a very significant redesign of My Illinois State, which many of you who use My have probably noticed. We took many of the things that the students need all the time, access to their email, access to ReggieNet, and put that way up at the top of My Illinois State so they could easily access that. And then the search bar within My Illinois State is actually filtered now so that when a student types in something as a keyword, they get the services they need. So when they start typing in TUT, looking for tutoring, it takes them right to the Visor Center and to the math department's tutoring and to the other areas that are providing tutoring. The other thing that we are in almost the final stages of development is the students' success team within My Illinois State. So right now, academic advisors are displayed in there. All academic advisors a student has, but the success team will expand very shortly within the next few weeks and will include their financial aid advisor, residence hall coordinator, career services advisor, international student services advisor, and their subject area librarian in Milner. And so that should be within the next few weeks that will launch in May. And then I spoke about the loaner laptops. The last thing is the student success dashboard. And this had been a huge collaboration between student affairs and academic affairs to take data from a number of disparate databases that we all use across different areas of campus, pulling it together in one dashboard and giving frontline staff the ability to see an entire picture of what a student's doing. So when's the last time they've been to see their advisor? When's the last time they logged into ReggieNet? When's the last time they were to career services? What type of activity do they have in My Redbird Life? Those types of basic pieces of information so that we can help a student across divisions and see how they're being engaged across divisions. You would be shocked if I didn't talk about University College, considering I led University College for 15 years here. And I just want to remind you of the services that exist in University College, because within the Division of Academic Affairs, the majority of our centralized academic support services are within University College. First year advising, undeclared advising, orientation, the Visor Center, retention and mentoring programs, and our first year seminars, all part of University College. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and hand it over to John to give a little bit of an introduction to student affairs before we talk about some of the case studies.
All right, thank you very much. I am going to try to get us back. And I apologize, I am using, our office is under construction, so I'm using actually a 3 monitor setup. And so for my normal large screen, so hopefully right now folks are seeing case management as care. Mm-hmm. Is that okay? Beautiful. Yep. Thank you. So again, really quickly to jump into it. And one other thing that's weird, my camera's on one screen, my picture's on another screen. So that's weird, right? I'm not looking at you directly, I'm looking at the screen. So our approach, our desire to support student retention, a big part of it comes through our case management model. And for us, it's something we've done. This Dean of Students Office has been around for about 15 to 16 years. And so we've kind of over time honed and perfected our case management piece. And so what we have is, and first and foremost, I'm going to run through this. What we've done is alignment with best practices. And it's really a combination. It's what we know works, common sense. And also, again, a lot of best practices, a lot of certification programs and things like that to make sure we were doing all the things and having a comprehensive approach. One thing I like to stress is our approach is the clinical versus the administrative. And this is why it's really relevant to many of you, because some of your names I'm familiar with. From a clinical perspective, and why we made a specific and distinct decision not to go with the clinical approach is clinical implies a higher degree of privacy, higher standard of privacy. We in our office take very liberally the ability to educational need to know. because we often, the group, all of us on this Zoom call right now, need to share, need to be talking in order to best help our students. If there's a referral to counseling, that happens. And then that, of course, at that point, confidentiality is adhered to and things like that. But we want this to be a conversation between us. So if we get information from a party, we want to be able to talk back and forth about potential interventions, how we're helping the student, and what the students need to move forward. So I really want to share that with folks. We've tried to get better. That is one thing we've improved. I like to think we've improved over the years, is the flow of information going both ways, from us to you. Our basic approach is some individualized attention. We look at the whole student. A lot of the things that we do involve bringing in multiple folks. So we're looking at students from a lot of different angles, to make sure that the intervention we craft is truly the most effective. Because what I'm sure many of you have discovered, we have oftentimes what we call the presenting issue, right? The issue that's on top there. I don't have a textbook for a particular class, but then that goes, you get as deep as issues into financial insecurity, food, home, housing insecurity. It can lead to a wealth of other issues. And so our approach is to try to tease that out at the beginning, not so much focused on efficiency, but making sure we're treating the whole student, getting them the information that they need and all of the services that they may need, because we know helping them in multiple areas is ultimately what takes care of the issue at its root. Ways we help, and this is the thing I'm going to spend the most time on really quickly, is we have a several levels of services, for lack of a better word, or ways that we intervene. Probably the most basic, the one, and I'll have a phone number at the end. One of the most basic that we hope everyone is aware of is our Dean on Duty. Every work day, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., there is somebody whose deck is clear for that day to deal with phone calls, walk-ins, pre-COVID, of course, and emails. And so there's not just one dean on duty. There are several of us, I think, right now. I think there are 6 of us in the rotation, but we know to clear off our schedule to work. That is our most basic level. That is our catch-all, right? Everything from I got a parking ticket, do I have to pay it? I want to get my lease reviewed, having issues with finances. That is our general catch-all. But that is the dean on duty, and that's every day, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And again, a lot of what we look to in our dean on duty tend to be the one and done kind of issues. They need to answer a very specific answer. We've gotten to the point now, and we transfer the knowledge fairly efficiently. So a lot of these things we can give the student an answer, and they move forward, and they're good to go. Our next level is our Redbird care team. Those are the issues, and we'll look at some case studies, and I'll actually pull from a very recent one to talk about. Those are issues of deeper issues of care, suicidal ideation, some of the housing, food, financial insecurity issues, bullying, things like that, things that require not just outreach, but outreach, follow-up, maybe some multiple types of outreach, multiple referrals, things like that. For our Redbird care team, we have a case manager. We borrowed this model from University Housing, but we have Joseph Thomas. I know he's interacted with some of you. He is our case manager. That is his role. That is his primary job. Dean on duty comes in. Whoever those folks on dean on duty are, if they can't handle the issue right away or it needs some follow-up, they then forward it over to Joseph. He takes it and he rolls. And he also has a graduate assistant who works with him, who's helped him. And that's something we've just been able to incorporate over the last 2 years or so, but it helped because the volume is steadily increasing. Our inclusive community outreach team, that team is in place and effective for issues of bias and discrimination for students in the community or on campus. So again, if students report a specific issue, again, any type of gender, identity, race, and that comes in, there are a team of us who work to address that issue. In particular, as you can imagine now, free speech issues and things like that. Some of those issues get a little gnarly, but again, as with all things, a cross-functional group that works to work with the student. If there is a conduct, criminal, or civil intervention necessary, we make that happen. Oftentimes, it is a free speech issue, but in that case, we have a conversation with both parties because we want to make sure everyone understands why we're taking the actions that we're taking or not taking any actions, but make sure both people at least have an understanding of how their actions may have impacted or affected others in the community. Other things, we do a role on the persistence committee that Amelia brought us to the table about. Again, another holistic way to approach students, primarily with financial insecurity, everything from textbooks to getting registration blocks cleared and things like that, but supporting that particular role. And also something that's new to us this year, a leave of absence committee. This is a committee that students, if they have a life circumstance that requires, it's not just a simple withdrawal from classes, but they need to take a leave from us and maybe for an extended period, and they're in a program or the circumstances such that we want to be able to put a pause, put a pin in their enrollment status and let them go and take care of the issue and then come back with the minimal disruption and timing in their pattern. Um, we have that. The one thing I want to stress is how to get us moving. All of those things I just talked about, 438-2008, or the email, or send someone over. Even we are staffing, we're doing it at minimal levels, of course, during the COVID times, but 387 is open, with the exception of today because we're getting some new furniture. But we are open to still, you all or students can walk into us, send us this email, it's being checked right now, or send us this phone call. All of those teams I just mentioned, all of those things I just talked about, get us going through that and let us worry about which team it needs to go to, who needs to follow up. You don't worry about that at all. I have a student who needs some help. These are the ways to get us moving. Let us know, and we'll go ahead and work it out. Again, we'll work with you back and forth because sometimes I don't know. Some people say I don't want the student to know, or other times people say, the student shared this with me and they said it's okay for me to share. Either way, we'll follow up with you and give you as much information as we can on what we're doing for the student and how we're helping that particular student. So with that, I will stop sharing for a bit and then.
So just want to re-emphasize, John said this, but I want to re-emphasize most of those teams, with probably the exception of Dean on Duty, the membership of those teams cuts across student affairs and academic affairs. And in fact, when you think about things like the Persistence Committee, also includes some folks from finance and planning who help us with a number of different things. And so I want to reemphasize what John said, that we use the Dean of Students Services, Dean on Duty, and particularly the Redbird Care Team as kind of that large top of the funnel to get information to the appropriate teams. We know it can be confusing. All of them have slightly different purposes. We don't want you as faculty or staff to be confused about the purposes. Start with Dean on Duty, start with Redbird Care, and we will get them to the right place to make sure that the appropriate people are talking about the needs of the students. So we're going to go a little interactive here. I'm giving you a warning. Yes, we're going to look at the chat. We're going to ask you to unmute a little bit and talk to us a little bit. I am going to share, and we'll kind of bounce back and forth between John and I, sharing some real life student cases and generating some ideas from you as faculty or staff who might be presented with this circumstance with a student, what you might do to help the student solve the situation. So I will start with the first one. Can everyone see that one? Yes? Okay. So again, real life examples. This student is a sophomore, has earned 72 credit hours, $8,000 past due. Just to give you a sense of some things we're working on, the past due amount that previously would block a student from registering was $250. If they had $250 past due, it would block a student from registering. We've been in conversations with student accounts and with financial aid to see what we can do to get that raised. Right now, we are at $1,000, which I think is a much improved benchmark for blocking registration for past due, but we are analyzing that to make sure that we're hitting the right amount. As we've gone through the pandemic, institutions across the country have really raised that bar in terms of what students need to owe to their university to be blocked from registering. Student's dad has not worked for 2 years. The parents do not support the student financially, but the student is still listed on their taxes as a dependent. And so that has significant financial aid implications, as you can imagine. Food insecurity during breaks, and has to stay in the residence halls during breaks because they do not have a safe or comfortable place to go home to. And the student, the presenting issue, stealing John's language, the presenting issue that brought the student to the Persistence Committee was simply that they could not afford an access code. They couldn't afford an access code for class. Access codes, as you know, are somewhere between $100 and $200, depending on what's included with the access codes. So for a situation like this, how would you advise the student? taking a page from all of you faculty who have that uncomfortable silence in class. Jim, your hand's up.
I think, yeah, is the microphone working?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, I think in the past, I've been, I've even had opportunities in which I've just brought some food for some students. But in this case, with the access code, I would probably send the student or even contact the persistence committee. I think Lisa Lawless is one of the key people on that committee. And I know that because I've worked in Visor Center, and they tend to do a pretty fast turnaround and sometimes triaging with financial aid and stuff like that, and can get a solution for a student so that he or she can get that access code in a pretty quick period of time. Issues that I have is often I don't hear about. I mean, students are kind of if we send the Dear Student letter and a student does not identify as as the Dear Student because they are financially excluded from the university, they may not answer that. So what I've had to do is kind of follow up. I see that you have not purchased the code yet, so how can I help? Is usually the way to do it. It's a little more things to put on my to-do list, but it's better than allowing our young students to kind of wallow in despair and allow the system to grind them out, and because it will.
Mm-hmm. Demetrios, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm going to follow on what Jim mentioned, that depending on how close you are with your student, the first step is to contact the student yourself, because they are more likely to respond when you individually contact them rather than sending a generic Dear Student email. And let's say, assuming that I don't have any of the information that you said, I just know that they cannot afford a student an access code because of financial problems. And let's say they leave it like there. If they tell us, the publishers, sometimes they do give us some free access codes that we can distribute to the students.
Mm-hmm.
And then if there are other concerns that they have, then we can say that, have you talked with the Dean of Students, because there are other additional resources that you might not be aware of, and they may be able to help with other issues that you may not feel comfortable talking to me about, but know that these are other resources that you can use.
Yeah. So great points, both of them. A couple things I will point out. Access codes very often are the primary presenting issue to us. Students are having a great deal of difficulty affording access codes for courses, because as you all know, they are non-refundable. It's one-time use, you get it, and that's what you have. And students are having some difficulty with it. It's not like you can buy a used access code the way you can buy a used textbook for a course. One of the other things that very, very often happens when these students present to us with the inability to afford books is that they have not completed their financial aid paperwork. And actually, in terms of textbooks, I would say the first place to send them is the financial aid office. I know I just said, send everything to the Dean of Students office. You still can send everything to the Dean of Students office. But the financial aid office is the first place, because we do have resources we can help them with, but very often we can't help them with those resources unless they've filed a FAFSA. And the number of students who miss out on free money because they haven't filed a FAFSA or they haven't done the documentation paperwork that's required if their case was called up on an audit with the FAFSA is huge. It is one of the largest financial problems we have at the university. And this is not from a lack of outreach from the financial aid office, I can tell you that. But students need to complete their FAFSA, absolutely. And then as you can see, the other issue that we would certainly discuss is many of the other issues that presented to us as the book. But we referred the student to the School Street Food Pantry. Right now, through the GEAR grant, I actually have off-campus or on-campus meal plans that I can purchase for off-campus students to address some food insecurity issues. And we also look at that past due amount and see what can they afford. $8,000 past due, 72 hours to graduate, not getting support from the family. This student needs a long-term financial aid plan also. And that's one of the very common things we do with these students is help them get into the financial aid office for a long-term plan. I love what Demetrio said about you as the faculty member reaching out to them first, because if it's one of our case managers, they have perhaps never heard that person's name before. They know your name. Well, we hope they know your name, right? They'll know your name as their faculty member. They're not going to recognize a Joseph Thomas, a Lisa Lawless, you know, a Levance Walker, maybe as one of the case managers. Okay, I'm going to do one more and then I'll hand it over to John.
And while she said that, about, I want to stress one other thing, Amelia, is the other part, the number of times we hear from, you know, a faculty member shared this with us, and I'm not exaggerating. Wow, I didn't even think they really cared. That's so cool. Like, they may have shared something with you thinking that that's where the buck was going to stop, and you may get back to them eventually, but knowing that you kicked off a chain that's helping them get help in multiple realms, it's amazing number of times students are just, they're flabbergasted. And hopefully we encourage them to go back to tell you and say thank you and things like that. But no, it's that individualized attention piece, knowing that, man, somebody in my large class or medium-sized class, my faculty member cared enough to go outside of their work and reach out and find me help, is truly, truly appreciated by family members and students alike.
Absolutely. So I'll do one more. Senior student, only 9 hours from graduating, only one working parent, but the parent remarried. And that takes the student out of eligibility for a Pell Grant, which up until this point is one of the things that has allowed the student to be able to continue at the university. Works 20 to 25 hours a week at a local retail store, paying $100 every paycheck to push down that balance, and has already received one micro grant. So what the persistence committee typically does is if we see some financial situations, we will issue some micro grants to the students. The average amount is somewhere around $1,500. Our cap is $5,000 in a student's career. We do look to see if a student has taken loans first, because we don't have the finances at the university to cover all unmet need if students are not taking loans to pursue their education. In a situation like this, anything unique you see standing out, anything you might refer the student to? I'll throw out one that we have in here. Oh, go ahead, Diane. I saw your hand.
I'm just going to ask, Amelia, if a student receives one micro grant, can they come back and ask for another one?
If they have not hit the $5,000 cap.
Okay.
Yes. And that cap is, you know, our general guideline. All of these are guidelines. They are not hard and fast rules, but we typically look at that $5,000 as a cap. One of the things that we would recommend in a situation like this, can we help them find a job on campus? This is a pretty significant difference. You know, I think we know that local retail stores, their lives and their livelihood depends on shifts that work for them, not necessarily shifts that work for the life of a student. We might try and find the student a job on campus. We also, in certain situations, when students get to a certain point, we call this the Stacy Malomboy solution. We have some students who are really hitting their limits in terms of financial aid when they get to this point. The Stacy Malomboy solution is there a full-time job that they could get on campus, maybe before they earn their bachelor's degree, that would give them the fee remission so that they could complete those 9 credit hours, earn the degree, and have a job while doing it. You know, the financial circumstances of some people are so severe that they need to get into the workforce to be able to handle some of this. Other thoughts? Jim?
Yeah, is there some point person that can fielding inquiries, because if information gets to me, it's something that I need to act on. And I mean, I actually have students that will work in a cafeteria here and then go back to Chicago, work in Chicago on the weekends and come back. So it's very, very common. Yeah. And I'm seeing Steve Hunt's already. I mean, this is one we've heard for. Big question is, do we have a point person to say, because our, my ignorance about this is, okay, who do I consult so that this person can kind of get on that radar about what direction to go and which action to take, because this problem's not going away quickly.
Right. So I'm going to go back to what John said, and that is start with the Dean of Students office. We use the Dean of Students office, whether it's persistence committee or any of those other committees, we use the Dean of Students office as that first point of contact. John, you want to add anything?
Oh, absolutely. I'd say, Jim, that's, call us, and then, sometimes we work with several of you multiple times with the student, because the information may come out bit by bit. We take care of one piece and then another piece comes out, and that's okay. Again, call us as many times as necessary. But yeah, if winning for anything, like we tell people, we joke with parents and families, you trying to figure out anything you can think of that you're just not sure where to go, because we don't want people to get their runaround, because sometimes, especially with our students, that's defeating in and of itself, right? I tried to call 2 offices and just kind of got the runaround. I'll just forget it. When in doubt, refer them to us, or you call us directly and just get them to us, and we'll try to be that one-stop shop. Even sometimes for us, if we need to call a couple referral points, what we'll say is, hey, we got to get some information for you. Give us a couple hours and we'll get back to you. And then we get back to them with an email or a list of places they need to go. So yeah, when in doubt, always call the Dean on duty, the Dean of Students office, and let us go ahead. And we want to keep the student from getting that runaround as much as possible.
Yeah. Demetrios.
I had like a question/comment
Okay.
for that one. So the first one is what you said. That's what I was thinking, that again, if it is a student that feels comfortable talking to us about that, as a department, we might think, okay, do we have a tuition waiver that we could give the student? Can we hire them, even if it is not full-time, like a student worker for some hours to try and help? The other thing that because we say that student has 2,000 past due balance, so they can't register. So sometimes, well, depending on the department or the college, there are these scholarships or fellowships where they are for students who are in financial need, but because they have certain due dates, it might be that you have to apply in March 15th, and the decision is going to be in April. And let's say as a department, we know that this student qualifies and he would get the money that would be able to cover this amount, but we cannot officially make the decision. Could this somehow be taken into account from someone and allow the student to enroll?
So it's like you tee me up with perfect opportunities to talk about something else. It's like we planned this in advance.
It's working.
Exactly. These are excellent points. There's a couple things to think about. Some of it depends on where the funding comes from, right? If there's a donor agreement that funds what the department has at their disposal, the department can't override the donor agreement. And so that's something to keep in mind. As your advancement people, we've talked to advancement about this, start working with donors to establish these types of funds. One of the things I would advocate for, do not put a GPA requirement on that fund. We are disadvantaging students who are already disadvantaged by a system. And to say you have to have a 3.0 or above to get this award, we're disadvantaging the most disadvantaged students, our low socioeconomic students who need the money the most. And we are advantaging typically students who have had many more advantages in their life. Okay, end rant on that. But the other thing I would say that becomes very complex with this when we hit a high credit hour student, and this is very important when you think about departmental funds that may be available. Many of these students that we see are at their cost of attendance, which means the university cannot give them any more money, financial aid, grants, anything, unless we can legitimately see that there can be an adjustment to their cost of attendance to the university. So there are some legal financial aid limitations. that the students may have on them, especially when they start hitting this high number of credit hours. And that's why consulting with the financial aid office is very, very, very important when you're talking about departmental funds. So I'm going to stop sharing and give it over to John for a few case studies from him.
I have a couple, but I'm a big fan of Law and Order, and it's a rip from the headlines thing. So let's just start with one that might be a little near dear people. What are some things you think we might need to think about or work with a student about if, say, an apartment complex they live in catches fire on a weekend? Unexpected, because there's never an expected fire, but just taking that, and I'll tee up the other ones I have, but something that's prescient, and I would imagine that maybe some of you have received some outreach from us this week based on this most current scenario. But an apartment complex, and the basic experience for our students was not too late, but early Saturday afternoon, fire alarms start going off, grab what they can grab, which in our students was incredible because sometimes this involved pets, primarily cell phones though. Students run out, it's cold, they can't get back in for a number of hours. What types of things, what types of support do you think your students may be expecting of you, or just general things that they may need to help them move through a situation such as this?
John, the first thing I think of is a computer. I mean, I can't imagine the panic some of these kids are thinking, oh my gosh, I've got that paper in my computer and I can't get it to my professor.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Laptop and technology is a big part of what we can do. And in a situation like that, I'll kind of go through it piece by piece as people pop something up. Again, because Amelia has a tremendous amount of foresight as we get in, it got supported more as we went into the to the pandemic. We have a very robust loaner laptop program here at Illinois State University. And so in that case, but again, as you might be imagining, especially students who already have, they aren't aware of it. So in a situation like that, that technology piece, one of the first things we did was think about that, begin to collect names and said, okay, what folks do we need to do some outreach for to either Amelia Shop or AT to provide these students with loaner laptops to get them through the short and maybe even long term to move forward technology needs. So absolutely technology is one. What are some other things that you think our students may have needed in this past week?
I think Derek has his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Yep. Mr. Story.
So I'm a guilty party of this because I know what it says on my syllabus, but I think a practical thing they need is an extension on some work due dates, I'd imagine, because obviously with you said the technology being a problem, not just the laptop, but the Wi-Fi, and then realizing, my own daughter is stuck in Texas right now, student teaching and taking a class here where they don't have Wi-Fi, water, electricity, and a number of things. I'm sure that fire situation doesn't mean that the student was able to go a block over to their group to friends and get Wi-Fi, even if they have a computer. So they probably are going to expect some sort of extension on due dates or some sort of empathy with regards to assignments and flexibility.
Absolutely. And what we want to do is, and again, everything that we do is a partnership. It is amazing. One thing I always joke with people about, the majority of the things that we in the Dean of Students Office request, and I did miss one thing that did trigger something. The only thing our office can mandate is you excuse an absence due to bereavement. Everything else is notifications, things like that. They are sent out with the intent that students are working with you. We're in some cases, we're doing a notification because usually if something for some kind of absence notification or emergency notification comes out, again, we want to help students. We don't want you to have to think about all 5 of my instructors or 6, depending if I have labs and things like that. So a big part of our service is we will send a mass one out for you. But again, in those situations, other than bereavement, which is, an immediate family member passes away, that absence is excused. And in a lot of ways, we are just the implementation arm of a policy passed by Student Government and Academic Senate. So in a situation like this, and I would imagine if any of you had students in class, you receive something from us saying, our office has been made aware that John has experienced. In a situation like this, we try to be overt. Oftentimes to protect students' privacy, we'll say a life event or a major event has happened in a student's life, depending on the student's level of comfort. But usually it's just the standard template saying, this has happened with the student. Because of it, they are without, in this situation, we're a lot more specific, they're without these things. They'll be in touch with you as soon as they can, but please work with them, extend to them every possible courtesy that you can in this most difficult time. If you have trouble, if there's some other things you want to negotiate, please work with us, because in that situation, we'll be an advocate for the student. So absolutely, and that was one of those things. Hopefully those things started coming out Saturday night as we started getting names of students. Because oftentimes students don't know what they're going to need. And so our first thing is just to make sure that you all as faculty are aware that they're going through something really either traumatic or at least requiring a huge adjustment, and we want to make you aware. But how you choose to work with those students, again, is always going to be up to you as a faculty. Some people say, take your time, just get back to class when you can. Other people extend assignments. Other people say, and a lot of it's depending on timing in the year. You're doing really well in this, don't worry about this class for a little bit. If a student has 4 different courses, it can be 4 different accommodations made by the faculty members in this case. That's okay. You just want to make sure that you're working with the students to whatever way fits best for your class and then in your particular course to support them. So absolutely, give them the technology, do the outreach to the faculty for them on their behalf. Any other quick things? Because I want to make sure we leave some time for questions. What I'll do when I wrap this up, I'll share with you the letter that we actually sent out in the situation to. This letter went to the students. But anything else before I put this, Demetrios?
I had more of a question. So
Please.
other than the academic related issues. So let's say that this student, it's one of the previous students that Amelia talked about, who doesn't have any other financial means to pay for staying somewhere else after the apartment got burned. So do you know, I'm assuming we are going to still send them to you, to the dean of students, but then do you know, let's say for housing, do we have like some reserved rooms for emergency cases that we can allocate to students? And I know that now because of COVID, there may be more available, but then assume that we were in a situation where we are in a face-to-face semester. As a university, do we have somehow to help them with that part?
And what we do, and that's definitely on an individual basis, but even in pre-COVID times when housing was really robust and we were at a little bit over 100% occupancy, Stacy and her folks are great about if they have additional spaces, because sometimes getting a student connected with residential life hits that other thing Amelia talked about. A meal plan often can come with it. Another thing that we have within our office, we have a student's attorney. We have a great relationship with all of the local property managers. And so sometimes it's just a matter of, if a student already has a place but they're behind on lease payments, Ed McKibben is the attorney. I'll pick on it because we've been dealing with them a lot this week. Ulysses is the manager of First Sight. Ulysses, we've got a student who's having some trouble with rent. This is the plan that they're on. We'll kind of vouch for them a little bit. Can you extend to them any potential courtesy? So we could potentially find some spaces for them on campus if available, but also depending on their situation with their property manager, we'll do an outreach and talk to the property management company about what's going on, what's happening, and try to find the students. Sometimes they may say, okay, if the student's working with it, they're really working hard. How about waiving the late fees for us or something like that? So we can work to get them something on campus. But we also work with off-campus property managers. And in the most, extreme situations, our case managers have connections with the housing authorities for the town, Normal, Bloomington. And if it's necessary sometimes because if they need to stay here to work or have family members, we can work to find them some options for low cost housing within the community as well. So we try to hit all of those, Maslow's basic needs. We try to have something up our sleeve for all those basic needs.
Just want to mention the comments that were put in the chat. Yes, the mental health counseling also is obviously going to be an important aspect for students who are impacted by the fire.
Absolutely. And so what I'm going to do, and just to pull up as we talk through some other things, is so an example of a situation like this, and again, our emergency manager, Eric Hodges, he always says, again, never waste a good emergency. So this is a serious incident. Luckily, no lives were lost or no injuries, so I don't want to make light of it. But this is the kind of situation that really hits, mental health, suicidal ideation. Never hit 1 or 2 areas, housing security. A fire is something that kind of hits all of those realms. And so just for folks to have a sense of it, and hopefully you're seeing this now, this is a letter that went out to the students because we wanted the students, because sometimes students and their families aren't even aware of what they may be missing. In a situation like this, I'll say really quickly, property management companies stepped up. They put them in a hotel. Some folks are going to be able to get back in by the end of the week. We are working with folks for long-term disruption. Food, EMDH stepped up, provide meal plans. Again, most of our students didn't necessarily need it. The Red Cross, in any major situation, we work with the Red Cross. They provide them, I believe it's up to $500 in emergency relief funds. They transfer electronically or provide debit cards or gift cards for them to go to Walmart, things like that. I touched on the course materials and notice to instructors. And even things like finding a new ID. And again, the counseling pieces, if you just have trouble processing this, we had counselors available for them this weekend, and also encourage them to go in at a little bit late. Sometimes the trauma doesn't hit you until after you start getting things settled. So we encourage them to go and seek out student counseling as well. And even if they don't want to go to student counseling, we connect them with local counseling options. So again, as you can see from a situation that's just, most recent, we try to work with, and as you can see, these are different parts of people on campus. These are, counseling center, academic advisors, things like that. So we're always trying to touch the student comprehensively, because that's what's going to keep them here and help them be successful. And so with that, is there any other questions? I know as we get close to the end, I want to make sure that we have time for folks to chat. And as we think about any other questions, I'll share one other thing, and just a really quick, again, another commercial for us pretty much, because we've talked about some very specific incidences, but hopefully people are seeing now what, when and what to refer. We are open all the time. Like, there's nothing too small, there's nothing too big, right? All the students just seems a little, you all know the quality of their work. So, John's been writing, very sunny, happy things, and all of a sudden I'm getting dark and moody in my essays and things like that. Let us know. One of the things we specifically made a thing to do, because we realize in a lot of ways titles are important. Before we had a case manager, I was doing a lot of the outreach. Sometimes many of us carry that connotation with us. Dean of students mean I'm in trouble, right? Our response rates from the minute we went away from me doing outreach to Joseph, I don't even know what he puts in his email signature. Joseph gets like 98% response rate, where I was getting 50%, because people are like, if I didn't do anything, I'm not calling that Dean of Students guy back. So Joseph has a great touch. Amelia, Lisa Loss is amazing. LeVance and Stephanie, the residential life case managers who do outreach, they are amazing at building rapport, connecting with students, and getting them to unburden themselves and talk and share. So please know that the folks aren't going to get a heavy-handed, emotionless robocall kind of outreach to the students. We're really going to try to approach them with care and making sure that they know, hey, we're just here to listen. We're not going to prescribe anything for you. We're just going to give you some options and help you walk through them if necessary. So any of these things pop up in any others, those are the times. I tell people, again, I'm a comic book guy, if your spidey sense starts tingling, you just something in your gut says something's not right with John in his class. And if they're not opening up to you, or you want to circle back, call us, we'll do some outreach. And we'll figure it out, or work with you to figure out the best intervention from there.
So I think anyone who's been in a meeting with me the last few months knows that I promise to end meetings at least 5 minutes before the top of the hour, so that you have 2 seconds to stretch and be able to go on to your next meeting. Some questions. I just saw Susan, do you see different issues with graduate students and undergraduate in addition to the overlapping issues? If so, are there particular things or particular places we should send them? I would say, or signals to recognize the circumstances are different. I would say what we're seeing right now, particularly on the persistence committee, are concerns from our international students. As many of you, international graduate students, as many of you know, international students have to prove their ability to pay, but the pandemic has hit countries across the world the same way it's hit us. And some of those resources that they had to pay for higher education before they came to the United States have dried up in many cases. So I would say, excuse me, right now we're seeing a significant pattern with international graduate students. We do have a member of the graduate school on the persistence committee to help us address any questions or concerns that come up with a graduate student. And actually, I know Demetrios is involved in this and a couple other people. We are developing a graduate student version of the Student Success Dashboard that identifies the particular indicators from a graduate student's life cycle that a graduate coordinator or graduate advisor would find important. So that should be rolled out, I think, in late summer or early fall. There's a bit of work to do on it.
One thing I'll say real quick, I didn't get to the back end of Susan's question about follow-up. That's another thing that going to a case management model has allowed us to do. When we talk about to students, if they are disengaging from the university, because sometimes the best thing for a student is to withdraw for a semester for either academic reasons. We tell students, what are your plans? And it makes me chuckle because there's a young man right now who's working at Meyer. And every time I pop in, hey, I'm coming back. I haven't forgotten. We haven't forgotten about you either. So we try to collect their information, and depending how long they're gone, we try to get a cell phone number and a non-ISU email, because I know after a certain point, the email might be disconnected. But if students engage with us and say, hey, I'm going to step away now, but I really want to come back. That's what our case managers, they typically use calendar reminders, right? So every 3 weeks, I don't want to say this young man's name, but every 3 weeks, Joseph knows to just reach out to him. Hey, what's going on? You're all right? You're trying to come back now. It's getting close to registration time. If you think you can make it happen next semester, this is a time to do that. And the folks in Res Life do something similar with folks that they know in the local, stay local in the area. So our case manager, that's a big part of it, is to continue long-term outreach and care for students. And we've had a pretty good success rate. We still have a lot of folks who are still on the periphery and haven't come back quite yet after a year. So even going for our first case manager, Quenisha, but we'll still keep reaching out to them and try to keep them connected as much as possible.
Me and John, I wanted to circle back to something that I think both Demetrius said and Jim Pancrazio said, and it's that outreach from a faculty member and that individualized attention. And, I certainly want to emphasize that and reinforce that, but I also want to express my gratitude to all of you here. I know that's how we work at ISU. I know that's what makes us distinctive and different and a premier institution. Never forget how your touch of kindness will have a ripple effect with that student, be maybe the one important thing they remember. Do y'all remember that old saying of, they don't really care how much you know until you know how much you care, right? Thank you for doing that.
Yep.
Absolutely. It makes all the difference in the world. You all are the folks who see them consistently, and oftentimes your thoughts or your regard means far more than they want to share. It's tremendously important.
Yeah, and we do appreciate continued referrals. It allows us, as you can see, to dig down into related issues, and we may help the student with an access code, but then we're probably going to help the student with 5 or 6 other things also. Other questions in like the 1 minute before we give you a few minutes to stretch your legs? Okay.
Thank you all for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Amelia and John, thank you so much for doing this for us. You had quite a turnout. At one point, we had over 50 people here. So there's